the Creative Coast Labs. I am Jen Bonet, Executive Director, and this is Entrepreneurs Night, our second ever Entrepreneurs Night. And I am really happy to be here with my friend, peer mentor, Darby Cox of Smoke Cartel, to talk about the Smoke Cartel story tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
We appreciate it.
We're really excited to have you here. Darby is probably one of the most successful female entrepreneurs in the tech-related space here in Savannah, Georgia. And so we're going to talk a little bit about her journey and her company and what she's doing. So why don't we start off about how you ended up here in Savannah, Georgia?
Well, I always wanted to go to art school. I sort of knew that from an early age. I've always been very creative. And I toured SCAD as one of my first art colleges, and I fell in love. My parents, of course, made me do the other tours, and I did the obligatory, oh, I'll see it, but my heart was here. And after college, I had to stay. My heart is in Savannah. There's something about it when you fly back to Savannah that just, our airport's beautiful. Our town is so beautiful. It's really great.
I do love flying in because you get to see the marshes and you see the sky, you know, the view from above.
The smattering of light, and then there's the dark ocean. And
and I even just enjoy driving over the bridge, the Talmadge Bridge. As you come into town, it's just kind of like, it's really cool. And one of the first things you see is SCAD. So that's interesting. So tell us about Smoke Cartel, how you got started, the origin story for Smoke Cartel.
So I met my business partner at SCAD, and at one point, we both sort of were doing our own projects at the time in school. I had a terrarium company that I was running, and he had just finished up a cryptocurrency mining thing. And that makes it sound a little less important than it was. It's pretty cool. He does some really cool things with that. But he said, Darby, now I'm going to sell bongs. And I rolled my eyes. I said, this is ridiculous. What are your parents going to think? What are my parents going to think? And then there was a shipment of bongs in the kitchen. He sort of lined them up like on the countertop, and they were on the island in the middle of the kitchen. And 2 months later, he said, "This is a thing. I'm making money. I have more customers than I can handle. Can you help me?" And okay, if you pay me, I'll do it. And I'm a little bit regretful of how doubtful I was for Sean at first. I definitely gave him a hard time. I told him it wasn't going to work for many months until he dragged me to our first trade show, and I got to see medical cannabis patients being helped, and my whole world changed. It was just, I believed it, and I'm very thankful he dragged me along kicking and screaming.
How old is the company?
We are just over 5 years old now.
Okay, and how many employees?
We're at 16. Okay. We've recently been trying out contractors in different locations to try to get like a whole variety of talent, which has been fairly successful, and also bringing more knowledge to our team here. We've been trying to do a lot of that recently. So sending them out to conferences and expanding our little network. Right.
And the cannabis industry is exploding, whereas
Absolutely.
5 years ago, it was
embarrassing
kind of
to talk about.
Outlier.
It took me probably a year and a half to tell my grandparents.
I was going to ask about those.
Now my grandparents, they tell their friends. So that's how far we've come in 5 years.
Excellent, excellent. Well, this is a little different because you're e-commerce. So I usually ask who your first customer was.
Oh. I don't know if I can name our first one, but we've certainly had some unique ones. Yeah. We did have one who wanted to have our logo tattooed on his forehead, and we said that probably wasn't something that we would support. We appreciated the love.
Yes. Now you've been through some iterations because you were e-commerce to start.
Yes.
And then you added retail.
Yes.
And then now you're back to
e-commerce.
Primarily focused on e-commerce. So talk about that journey. And
we really thought that jumping from e-commerce to storefronts was going to be super easy. We thought that we had this whole customer base that, we could target people on their location and immediately get people to go to storefronts, but it turns out that the inverse is true, that people can start storefronts and draw attention to web stores, but it doesn't necessarily work as well in the converse when people are so dedicated to an online presence that's how they've known it. They don't necessarily want to go in person for that. The convenience is already there. That's the establishing factor. And we were so dedicated to our e-commerce that we never really focused on building out a full store frontier and everything that it takes to do retail. I'm very impressed with people who can manage chains of stores. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful that the new owners have that skill and that they now have a whole CBD line that's been doing really well for them in a chain of stores. But I love being behind the screen.
Yeah.
There's just so much more I feel that I can do there. I'm very good at that part of it, and I love our customers, but I also love interacting from them with my cell phone.
Excellent. And you've also expanded from just cannabis-related products to pet products. Talk about that.
Yes, we have some doggy joint toys so that your dog can safely participate in your cannabis fun. We have a whole line of themed pet collars. We just, I was informed recently that we had to do a cat line. Apparently we were being a little doggist.
Biased against
So now
cats,
we are full animals across the spectrum. No pig products yet, but maybe soon.
Excellent, excellent. I always think about the entrepreneurial journey as, this series of sprints, lots of ups and downs, and lots of 4 o'clock in the mornings being like, oh my God, am I going to make it? Why did I do this? All those sorts of conversations, things with yourself, right? So at what point, like how far in were you when you were like, okay, wow, this is working. This might actually work.
It took me 2 years before my hands stopped shaking, but when I talked to my team.
Okay.
I think I always knew that the concept would work, but it took me a lot longer to believe in myself.
Okay.
And at some point, there was a point when the problems didn't scare me. It was more exciting. It became this thrill where I realized that I had the knowledge to solve the problems and I wasn't afraid of the problems. That wasn't stressing me out.
Right.
It was, how do I complete my goal faster? Am I teaching my team enough? Am I being a better mentor? And when I realized that I'd made that mental shift, it was, oh, okay, wow, I'm doing this.
Excellent.
How long have I been here?
Right, that's awesome. You also talked at Geekend, you gave a great presentation on why you're teaching your entire team to code.
Yes.
For those that were not there, could you give a quick recap on that?
Yes.
Why that's so important to your company culture?
So for us, we've taught one of the basic things of programming, which is if this, then that. And it's how computers function and the logic in which they operate. And we've been teaching our team that if you structure decisions with that sort of logic-based approach, you're going to be more successful. And once they start doing that, they implement programmatic thinking, and then they start thinking, okay, so this is how a computer is solving a problem. And when things in the e-commerce business ultimately break, because more and more people are working in businesses that require technology, and that's what it's going to be in 5, 10, maybe even sooner than that.
Already?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. They need to learn that technology isn't scary. And if they embrace that and that they understand, okay, here's how you're making this decision, they can solve so many more problems even without being a full stack developer. They can look at something and say, okay, if this particular thing broke, then it can't be that, because if this happens, this always happens. And the computer isn't going to break that structure. And it just gives them this security in which they can make decisions. And I really enjoy seeing them take something that was once so magical and so scary and make it something that they fully understand. It's just really empowering, and then they feel like they can solve anything.
That's great. That's awesome. What has your biggest challenge been in getting this business off the ground and the success that you've had in the last 5 years?
I think it might be back on what you said earlier on realizing my own skill set. I think that the hardest thing for me was realizing that I could do it.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of times when being an entrepreneur is really scary and hard, most days. And enduring that is really difficult, and people don't really want to talk about that because they want to make entrepreneurship seem so glorifying, and it's always fun, you're always successful, and you've always got to be this great, confident leader to your team, but you don't always feel that. And that can be really hard. And realizing that I did have the strength to go through that, I think made me be successful in the company.
Yeah. I think my first startup, the worst thing, the hardest thing for me was the first time I had to let some people go.
I cried.
Right. And this was
awful.
There's letting people go for cause, and then there's letting people go because the company's changed and they're no longer a fit for where the company's heading, and or you have to let them go because of cash flow issues or whatnot. And they're just amazing people and they belong there, and you know, they have families and you've made them part of your family. Mm-hmm. And that was always the hardest thing for me, I think, was that, you know, letting somebody amazing go for something that was, as a leader, I perceived to be my
Your fault, yeah.
Right? I'm paying these people and we've created this company, and if I can't continue to pay them, then I've failed. So that was always the hardest thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the idea of failure itself and the constant sort of rolling, because then you feel like you failed, but you still have to keep going.
You gotta keep going, especially if you have investors, right?
Yep.
So they have expectations of you from at a different level, possibly, than when you're playing at today.
And they are not angels, despite the name.
Yeah, so you have some investors.
Indeed. I think when I was 19 and I first started the company, I thought of angel investors very much as the term implies, and that someday someone would just swoop in and realize it would be a phenomenal idea and say, here's all this money, and then just run with it. And that's really not how it works.
Let you do what you want, right?
And yes, there are obviously expectations, and I'm really thankful that I have investors that have been more partners than angels. Because I don't think you necessarily want a hands-off investor. You do want someone who is going to help you participate and you know, guide you somewhat in the right direction as much as they can with the advice that they're allowed to give you. But it definitely changes things. Taking on capital money, going public, changing the structure of your business. For anyone that is thinking about going public, I would recommend spending a lot of time on your governance procedures and making sure that you really understand how things run operationally, because you have no idea how much being public is going to take from your time until it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, talk about going public, because I don't, so you leveraged some of the new Jobs Act law to go public and raise funding for your company. Without necessarily going after venture capital or any of those steps. You basically went straight to the consumer market to say, we're raising money, we're going public. So talk about that.
So ultimately, I'll preface saying that I am very glad that we did it. But for the first year, there was a lot of, am I sure I'm cut out for this?
Yeah.
And it took a lot of finding the right mentors, finding people who really knew what they were doing and they could assist me. And I'm thankful, you know, you nominated an excellent board member for us who's been really tremendously helpful in guiding me. And without that, I don't think I could have made it. But going public and learning everything that we were forced to do, it made me grow the company up so much quicker than I was expecting to do it. You know, we were at 5 million in revenue. I had all these employees. I was done in my brain. I'd done the thing. And then I went public and I realized there was this whole other world I had no knowledge about. And I had to learn it incredibly quickly. And I was for a while, and then it became like, okay, treading.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're still in the boat.
Yeah.
Haven't capsized yet.
Yeah, so Robert Gadd, who I interviewed last month, CEO, co-founder of On Point Digital, described his company as a 17-year overnight success. Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
That's kind of how you feel, right?
Yeah. You know, and sometimes it feels like year one. Sometimes it feels like it's been 10 years, and then a blink of an eye.
So now you're kind of in the midst of launching a second business.
Yes.
That's more software centric.
We're very excited
Talk
about
that.
So in some ways, Sean and I, my business partner Sean, have kind of always considered Smoke Cartel as a testing ground for the tech services that Sean has built over the years. And so I was actually doing this research today with my controller, and we were looking on the Shopify platform, and it was saying that 80% of Shopify users believe that their business is run predominantly by the applications that they use for the network. And that's what we did, is we built out apps for our usage, for e-commerce usage along the last 5 years, and then tested them among our team. And what we found, the ones we found to be successful, we're working on launching to the public. So we launched our first one last month, and we're about to reach 100 users. We're pretty excited about that. It's nominal, but it's still exciting. And it's a data backups and recovery app. And so we've lost so much time over 5 years to
accidentally deleting a
entire code history, themes, products, pictures, etc. One time, our number one selling product is obviously bongs.
Right.
And at one point, someone deleted our bong page.
Okay.
And that was hours, days of work to get back. And so we created a system where that no longer happens to us. Anything that's done digitally on our system is all recorded, and with a click of a button, it's back to you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh.
And so but software is different.
It is, and it's been very exciting for our customer team to start working with these new users, because they're used to an entirely different set of customer questions. And now they're getting, oh, can you refresh this product data set for me? And, oh, how do I sync this with this? And they've had to really pick up quick. And that's why I think programmatic teaching is very important, because since they learned that skill early on, now they understand why it's coming full circle.
So interesting. You have the same kind of support people serving the e-commerce business and the software business.
It is a really crazy overlap. That is what I said.
Okay.
So half the day it's, resolving complaints about broken bongs, and the other half it's making sure that your app is installed correctly.
Right. And so talk about marketing both products, right? So with Smoke Cartel, you have limited marketing channels, right? There's limitations as to where you can spend ads there.
There's no Google AdWords for us. There's no paid social media promotions. There's no television advertisements. We can't really do radio advertisements during traditional times. We have a lot of restrictions with the cannabis market, but now with software, we're allowed to advertise anywhere. We're allowed any payment processor that we want to use, which is also really great for us. So it's opened this whole other door for, my partner Sean is an advertising major, and so for him, he was, I can use all of this skill set, and then in cannabis, both arms behind his back, he can't do anything that he's learned to do, and so he's very excited to be able to put those skill sets to use now.
And will you continue to run both businesses, or is your...
So far, that's the plan, yes. We really feel that our technology is what makes Smoke Cartel so great. It's what makes our team uses it every day to do their jobs. And I don't think that they could exist without each other.
Okay, cool. Very cool. For personally, switch to a little bit of a personal question here is like, what's your end game? What does success look like for you personally?
I think the more that I can teach and share knowledge, the more successful I'll feel. I'm not sure. That's a really good question. I'm very happy doing what I'm doing so far. It's been really rewarding. I've felt like I've gotten to grow a little bit as a person every day. As long as I can keep doing that, I'll feel successful.
And, I wear a couple different hats here in Savannah. So with Creative Coast, trying to catalyze this community, and at CETA, trying to actually bring more like-minded people from outside in. What can those two organizations do to help support your businesses or businesses like you moving forward?
I think continuing to do a good job of facilitating introductions, that's been really great, because you guys get to see all of these different things that, you know, we in our little business bubble don't get to see. Working with you has allowed me to meet people that I don't think I would have met otherwise. I've been able to meet people in industries I wouldn't have met otherwise. And I think that's really beneficial. Even going to the healthcare seminar that you guys held was fascinating and expanded, you know, how we do our own HR system. And I wouldn't have thought to do that without being brought here and having that inspiration.
Cool. One of the reasons I wanted to interview you is that I think e-commerce in particular is an industry that's, you know, growing like insane, right? And I also think it's an interesting opportunity for Savannah.
Yes.
Right? Because the port, I mean, number 4 port in the world, soon to be number 1 port in the world.
Using the port is incredible.
Right.
We have a phenomenal port system. They are so quick. They are so effective. I mean, if you get a shipment in, it's hours. It can be cleared and on your doorstep.
Yeah. So, what kind of, like, I've never run an e-commerce business. I've run a SaaS business, software business, so I get that business, but I've never run an e-commerce business. So, you know, what are the biggest challenges you faced with e-commerce, and then what are the, on the opposite end, you know, what
makes it easy?
Yeah, what makes it easy?
When I had a storefront, it was very intensive and expensive to change that storefront. If customers didn't like that layout and you had to build a wall and you had to spend 10 grand on new store displays, that was a huge cost. So I'm very fortunate to have a really excellent development team. And we redo our storefront often, because that's part of a good e-commerce design, is constantly thinking about what's the best way for my consumer to navigate my website to get to these products. And so you're thinking about, how is your consumer using these products? How do they look about them in their house? And when they search for that, what's the best way for them to get there? And it's similar to a physical storefront, but it's also very different, because it's in a totally different dimension. And there's no smell, there's no really light affecting that you can do, there's no touch. So you have to think of ways to interact with your consumer that aren't that. And I think that's really exciting. I think that's what kind of keeps me awake at night, my gears turning on what's the next in e-commerce design going to be? How am I going to display that product?
It's really about user experience.
The greatest way possible.
How do I create an amazing user experience? And how do you do that and make it different when you're running on the same platform as everybody else, like a Shopify or a Magento, or, you know, there's only a certain number of e-commerce platforms.
I think we're going to see virtual reality e-commerce in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
That's my crazy bet. That's my crazy thing for the podcast.
Put on the headset and walk through and pick out what you want off the shelf. And
get to virtually try it on.
Yeah?
Yep.
Cool.
Virtually smoke out of it.
Now, one of my favorite things, and you don't do this anymore, not at least this facility, but one of my favorite things was the first time I visited your office, other than the cool floor, was the fact that you had somebody blowing glass in the back.
Yes, we unfortunately don't do glass blowing anymore in-house, but I loved that so much when we did. It was really phenomenal. That's a skill that I'm going to be thankful I know about for my entire life.
Yeah.
Glass manufacturing.
What made you hire artisan glass blowers to work on your e-commerce company?
Love.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
It was really phenomenal content to gather. I think that getting to teach our consumers about it was so fascinating, and then getting to learn that journey and have that experience as part of user experience, learning about their product in that way, since they didn't get to touch it beforehand, getting to see that whole story of how it's made,
how it's
getting
created.
their hands.
And so how many bongs do you guys sell in an average month?
A few hundreds to a few thousand, depending on the month.
And so is that seasonal?
It is.
Wow.
So it's surprising. A lot of people don't think that we're seasonal. April is a very big month for us.
Okay. Okay. So you've been busy. You're tired.
Indeed. Oh goodness. I'm glad to get a little
And we had
slower
Geek
summer
On,
season.
too.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
And the new building.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
I'm just
Geek
thinking
On
how
next
busy
year is
your
going to
busy
be-
month
Ooh.
and Geek On together was probably a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit
we
much.
have a few holidays that we require people to work, and unfortunately one of those is Black Friday, and the second is 420.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
it's a all hands on deck
All
team
hands on
meeting
deck. Okay. Excellent.
kind of days.
Yeah.
We bring cupcakes though. It's mandatory to work on a
Mandatory
holiday to get some
cupcakes.
cupcakes.
And dogs allowed?
This is true. We have a very dog-friendly workplace. I can't go without the thing.
Yeah. For those of you that have not seen their facility, their floor looks like it could have been blown glass. It's that kind of cement floor that's kind of finished in a very
Looks a little
artistic
wet at all
design.
times
It's
with the
really,
gloss.
really pretty.
If you are looking for a great flooring company, Old Coast did that floor for
Coast.
us.
Excellent.
And they're local here in Savannah.
So talk about, obviously there had to be some changes in your team as you went from focused 100% on e-commerce
Yes.
to software and e-commerce. So how did that transition go? And talk a little bit about, I think remote is really key. Remote workers are key for Savannah, Georgia, I believe. Either people that have the opportunity to choose to live here,
Yes.
and their bosses are elsewhere, or vice versa. So
I
talk
agree.
about how both how you went through this transition around your employees, and then the second component is now that you have this remote workforce in some cases, how do you manage that? What are the systems and processes and tools that you put in place to do so?
So the biggest change that we made to our staffing is that about a year ago, we decided to offboard our fulfillment and get rid of the majority of our warehousing team and offboard that to a 3PL center that could better handle our fulfillment as we grew and needed to scale. And that was a very hard moment for our team because warehousing had made up, half of our staff for our entire existence. Really, that was the first hire that we'd ever had was for warehousing, for fulfillment. And it hurt a lot because these were people who'd been with us for years. But ultimately, we had investors, we have shareholders, and it saved us 70% of our operational costs. So it was the better decision for the business. And that allowed us to make our transition into SaaS, which is the better thing for our company, but was a very hard emotional cost to do.
Right.
There's a second part to that question.
The second part was, so now as you've onboarded new people, quite a few of them you said are remote now, so that you have these different skill sets.
So my customer success leader, Erin Wilcox, maybe 2 years ago, she had this idea to onboard remote agents for her team because she wasn't able to get as many people as she wanted during the hours that she wanted to stock for customer service, because a lot of our customers were on the West Coast. We have customers in Canada, we have customers in Australia. And so she started that whole process, and she's always been very focused on our company culture. And so for her, she did a lot of research on how do I make sure these people are connected.
Right.
And so when we started pivoting to that moment about a year ago, and we started doing the remote fulfillment and also using a lot of our public relations team is remote as well. I solicited Erin's help, and she was instrumental in making sure that we transitioned our company culture that way. We try to be very present on Slack. We do company videos that we send out for everyone to see. We ask people to send in pictures of what they're doing on the daily basis or a weekly basis if they want to share pictures of their cats, of their homes, what they did for fun, their meals. We try to be very generous in sharing that information so that you would feel like water cooler talk. We have a Slack channel that's specifically meant for random chatter and photos. We have, we do a little, what is the word I'm looking for? Pamphlet,
Okay.
like a little pamphlet that we send out to everybody, where each team lead submits what they've been doing that month.
Okay.
And we
Like a
try to keep it
newsletter.
very, that's the word, newsletter.
Newsletter. Awesome.
We try to keep it very communicative.
Do these people come here ever?
Yes.
Okay.
So for our annual birthday, we do have everyone down. We try to invite everyone that participates in our business, whether it be our auditors or our legal team. We try to invite everyone that's been with us that year. We just had our 5th birthday party in
Excellent.
January. That was very exciting.
Well,
we did
I wasn't invited. I'm
tacos.
sorry I didn't make it. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. That's my fault.
It's all right.
Gonna eat
It's
me
okay.
now.
Next time. Next year. January
6th.
what? January 6th.
January 17th.
17th. Okay. Okay. Phew. All right. I'll put it on my calendar.
Okay. No, I could probably get you there if I book you this early, right?
January is a slow month for me.
Okay.
It's good. So I think one of the hardest things to do around, especially when you're focused on culture, you've used culture a lot, is you're trying to create a culture and maintain it across remote, but how do you hire for culture?
I think that has always been one of the most difficult things to do. And you read lots of articles that says you can see it in someone's eyes, or it's the grit. And what exactly is the grit? How do you measure that trait? How do you find that in them? Is it an IQ test? Is it a series of questions? Is it a personality test? Is it their favorite color? And I don't think that you necessarily find it by hiring. My team member, Erin, that I mentioned as being so integral to helping us build culture, when she first came on for the first 3 months, I didn't think that she was going to make it with us for longer than a year. I thought for sure that she was going to leave and that she necessarily didn't care about the business. She'd come from nursing. So I thought in my brain, like, how is she going to commit to the cannabis industry that's so different? And she's integral. She's been so excellent for the company, and I wouldn't have seen that at first, but it was her effort over time and that relationship that we built. And then I knew.
Right.
And some people, I guess you do know instantly. I have our operations manager that I met at an event and I said, this is the person I need for the job. I will get this person no matter what I have to do,
Yeah.
And you have both of those, and somehow you get what you get. I think it's more they choose you. And you have to do as well as you can with who chooses you.
Yeah. Trying to think, creating culture was always putting the employee first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to meet them where they're at, and understand the world that they live in. And I used to always tell people, so I was a chief technology officer, and people have asked me how I manage my teams, and I'm like, well, you can't, right? Like, you gotta manage the individual.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that these 3 people are really high achievers, and the way to get the most out of them is to actually put a problem in front of them that you have no idea how to solve, but they're going to solve it because that's what they do best. And then you've got the person over here that if you need to actually give step-by-step instructions to for them to be most successful. And so I've always found it's really, really hard to think about culture. And it's so important, especially like probably from employee 3 on, right?
Absolutely.
Because the first 2 are you and Sean, your co-founder. So there's no need to talk about culture at 2 people, right? But when you add 3 or 4 or 5.
And then how do you keep those people motivated? How do you validate them for their work? Because everyone finds validation so differently.
Yeah.
I can compliment you and that might work for you, but for others that can turn them off.
Yeah.
People are very different. I love getting to learn about people, though.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great part of my job.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Because when you get that right, that's incredibly rewarding. When you know that you've been able to teach someone a new skill and they appreciate that, or they think that that's been helpful to them in their lives, and they express that back, and you actually get that moment of,
Yeah. 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 Exciting.
I have a question.
Oh, that sounds a question. All right.
If you could start if you could do your e-commerce store again, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
ooh, I probably wouldn't have done the stores. I would have taken that energy and kept focusing on my e-commerce growth and spent a little bit more time figuring out the perfect e-commerce store. Because
What is the perfect e-commerce store?
I think it's ever evolving. I think that you have to reevaluate your customers consistently and figure out what they want, because your customer isn't static. They're going to constantly change and grow, and you want your site to grow with them. You know, it needs to grow up as their tastes change. It needs to be their friend. It needs to be something that supports them. A website as a friend.
So one thing that you haven't talked about with e-commerce is actually product selection.
Yes.
Like you talked a lot about user experience. To me, I would have thought that the most important thing would be when starting an e-commerce business would actually be the product selection. That user experience could take a back seat to product, to the right product.
Mm-hmm. But no, Sean and I were talking about that the other day, and we were trying to identify and discuss, the one product that had initially led to our big success, and that is the Smoke NATO. Without a doubt, we have sold more of this product.
Smoke NATO. Okay.
We have sold more of this product.
We might
than
need a
anything
description
else.
of what the Smoke NATO is.
Put this in context for me. And
Yes.
Because I really haven't looked at your website or anything. How many different bongs do you have? Like, how many varieties of bongs? I mean, and then
Hundreds.
So there are
Hundreds of different varieties of bongs. There's encyclers, recyclers. There's dozens of different percolators. I could really kind of go crazy into that for a second, but most people are familiar with like a standard straight tube or a standard beaker bong, and then we'll call some dab rigs over here, rolling papers.
Okay, so you've got
All these different
varieties of
things.
bongs. And then, in addition to bongs, what other products do you have?
We also carry cannabis-themed dog accessories, joint squeaky toys, harnesses. We also have a CBD line, Mind CBD. We have a cannabis-themed apparel line that's mainly female focused. We've got some Blunts of Our Boys t-shirts that we're pretty proud of. It's our summer theme. What else do we have here? Rolling papers, grinders, anything that you would use to consume tobacco or cannabis, we typically sell.
Okay, so online head shop, accessories, okay. And then why, you were earlier talking about wanting everybody to be programmers and understand all this
Yes.
stuff. Okay, so obviously you must have created your own website and everything. So you're not just going to say, oh, I'm going to buy a packaged website and stick my products on there.
Correct.
Okay.
We think that customizing your website is really important to your user experience, that if you just use a blank template, you're not necessarily going to get the best customer that you want. For us, we target a customer that's first coming into cannabis, maybe an older customer that's learning to learn about the product. So our age demographic is a little bit higher than that of some of our competitors. And we try to be very educational. So we have a whole email series where we educate our consumers about the products depending on the specific product types that they buy. And for us, that's really crucial. It's led to our reputation. It's led to why we have so many returning customers over, new onboarding customers. And I think if you I've seen hundreds of companies in the last 3 years try to create competing web stores, and they've just scraped my website and created the exact same thing and failed. 6 months, a year later, they're out of business. That's not their brand. That's not what they're trying to do. They're not doing the full effort of building and designing for their consumer. And your consumer isn't dumb. They realize that. They care. They care about what they're shopping from. They care about their product. They want to know about it. And if you're not providing that for them, they're going to find somebody who is.
Are you manufacturing any of your products, or you're just sourcing them? You're just finding like the best and the most.
So yes, we have contract manufacturing for probably 90% of the things that we.
So you're designing your own products.
Yes.
You're like, this is what I want. Make this.
Yep. We have an engineer on staff as well as an excellent motion media designer, graphic designer, and they work as a combo to make things. They just did a fuelless rechargeable lighter that it lights the little bit of your bowls, but it also, we've discovered recently in our office that it will light the last little bit of your candle. So if you have like a thin candle that you can't get into,
Can't get in there anymore.
I have the solution for you. Oh yeah, it's called the VioSpark.
Awesome. Now, what is the Smoke NATO?
The Smoke NATO is a bong for flower usage, and when you inhale, the water spins like a little tornado.
Like a tornado.
Oh yeah.
And that's your number one.
Yes, we've
was
sold
the
more
thing
of
that-
that thing than anything else. Next might be our little glass blunts, and then maybe pineapple handpipe.
Okay.
I thought that our penis handpipe was going to be much more successful.
Okay.
What about fulfillment?
So we have offboarded the majority of our fulfillment to a 3PL center. So we'll get, a lot of our inventory staged in Savannah, and then we'll break it up and send it out. We do some fulfillment in Savannah, maybe 10%. And that's stuff that we customize, that we'll decal in-house, or we'll do something specific to before we send it to the customer.
Excellent.
Pricing also, in terms of retail, you also have wholesale pricing. So
Yes.
you have to have a keen understanding
Yes.
of inventory management and costs for fulfillment.
And, what it costs to manufacture the products, and making sure that you're getting them from reputable sources, and, what it costs to clear customs, making sure that you're paying your taxes, and the import fees have gone up recently. That's been a fun one to swallow.
And you're offering this also as a 3PL service
Yes.
to others who are wanting to use your platform.
Yes, we do help people with drop shipping and making sure that, if you want to be a competitor to me, I actually sell the services to do that as well.
I have a couple questions for you.
Ooh.
I saw you and Sean speak at Startup Grind more than a year ago now. Yeah, forever ago. And I asked you a question. I asked, was there a time where you felt like you were at rock bottom, and if you were able to work through this thing, then you just couldn't go on? I remember what you said, and I'm curious to know if your answer is the same.
Oh, I don't know if it would be. I don't know if it would be the same. In September of last year, so after Startup Grind, Google changed their algorithm, and they've since retracted said algorithm update as of 2 months ago. But when they did that, our rankings were severely impacted. And so the only thing that we had was our brand reputation. And so the only customers that we were receiving were no longer from SEO, but only from people who knew about us and were our returning customers. And that's what kept us alive, essentially. And if it wasn't for 5 years of long work establishing that name, when the algorithm changed, we would have been toast. Many of our competitors were toast. And surviving through that was absolutely the hardest thing that we've done. We had to lay off people, and I had to look people that I loved in the eyes and get rid of them. And I had to keep motivated. And that was the hardest. I didn't want to come into work and be positive and get through it, but I had to. And ultimately not being positive and not getting through it, I wouldn't have done it, but here I am. Can't keep me down.
Yeah, that's a great segue to my second question. So those of us who've been following along at home, see Smoke Cartel, we see that you produce a really fun little print publication. We see that your developers made a game not too long ago. You make your own products. You had a really fun video where you're wrapping each other in saran wrap. I've heard really good stuff about your internal mentorship program, and many of the most awesome people that I know are on your team. And I think that you've been successful in creating a culture of fun. And many of us in this room know from experience that if it looks easy and it looks effortless, then it's almost certainly not. So how do you cultivate fun when you're going through situations that are not at all fun?
So I think that you can't take yourself too seriously. There were definitely days when I wanted to be strict and come in and, let's crack the hammer down, let's really slam out the work. But that you can't do that for 2, 3, 4 months on an end without burning out your entire team. You have to remind them that the work that they're doing is important, even if they don't know it's going to succeed. You have to make them feel like you care about that work, even if inside you're thinking, oh, why did you just waste 2 weeks of time on this project? Things are so crucial right now, and you can't snap, and you have to remind them, I think, of that. I'm so lucky to have a team that was gracious throughout the entire thing. And, they checked in on me and they made sure that I was doing okay. And we built that camaraderie up, and so that we could have that. And, they knew that I was doing my best, and I knew that they were doing their best. And I think that's all you can ask of somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about going public.
Yes.
You have an IPO.
We have not IPO'd. We did do a round of crowdfunding, which they make me call that something else,
Okay.
which I can't remember at this time, unfortunately.
So you sold shares then?
Yes, we do trade daily on the market. We are trading under SNKC. You can.
So how did you structure it to maintain control?
So my partner and I do still own the majority equity percentage of the company. We haven't done a round where we've sold any of our personal shares.
Well, you're even smarter than I thought.
Thank you.
So for those that are thinking about that kind of thing, happy to talk to you about it in detail.
Talk to Jen if you need advice doing that.
Like a small little known fact, when Facebook went public, Mark Zuckerberg only owned about 10% of the company. It's not about ownership, it's about voting rights. So he had about 60% of the voting rights for the company, and that's how he maintained control before going public. So he didn't own all that much of the company, right? When you look at Angie from Angie's List, when they went public, she owned 2% of the company. Now they took multiple rounds, and so she just kept getting pushed down to the fact that she only had 2% of the company. She still did really well for herself, right? But so it's not always about equity. It's really the voting rights that matter more. Yes. Yeah.
I have
so
a
it's
very
about voting
good
rights.
lawyer that is on your side. If you are going public with another company, they'll likely try to supply you a lawyer. Use your own.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So last September when Google changed their algorithm and you guys got hammered by it, so now that you know that that situation is a possible situation, like what lessons did you take away from that and how would you foolproof your company in the future?
So when that first happened to us, we had one e-commerce website. We now have 18. So we've diversified our assets. When algorithm changes like that happen, not everything gets hit equally. Lots of things go up, lots of things go down. With many more websites, we mitigate a lot of that risk. As well, we did make the pivot into technology, which is now, since we have an app on the market that is a paid app, we are starting to receive revenue from. That is another option for us to diversify that risk, but since that isn't dependent on SEO. Oh, immediately the first thing, okay, this is never happening again.
Yeah.
My stomach couldn't handle it.
So to keep things going, you need, what is it called? Products that wear out, expendable products. Because bongs last forever, more or less, right?
Well, they're glass.
So they do break, okay. But they're not like the rolling papers.
Right, correct.
So, and of course, I know sounds like you're coming with new products. Everybody's like they want the next coolest products.
We found that most users have, if they are a glass user, they probably have between 3 to 5 glass pieces that they use. From that, those users typically are also paper users or vaporizer users. They typically alternate between one or the other on either side of the spectrum there. And vaporizers parts do break. Those are replaceable parts. Same with papers are also consumables. And then we sell joint toys for your dog. Your dog's going to wear through those, as well as our CBD products are obviously replenishable, usable products.
Yeah, talk about your CBD products.
So that's new to us. That was one of the projects that we opened up as a diversification to sort of mitigate our risk there. And CBD, is recently legal with the hemp farm bill laws. So that's very exciting, even though it's still a little gray area. I actually saw that the FDA issued a thing the other day saying that they weren't going to allow CBD in food, except I see that absolutely everywhere. So we'll see how that's enforced. We'll see how that's gonna work out for them. But I think that it is a really phenomenal thing. I think there's a lot more research that needs to go into studying cannabis, obviously, because it's not just CBD or THC or THCA that's important. But I like having that available to people to use that aren't into smoking weed, that are in it for the medicinal reasons. That's sort of our mission.
I saw a big article on that too, and it's just a huge growing industry. So how do you differentiate yourself from other CBD related products?
I think it is all about the information out there. So that was what we did with Smoke Cartel, is just, this is how you use this product, this is what we recommend for it, this is how it's made, this is how we clean it, this is everything that we know that we can pass on. And sort of doing the same, this is where it's manufactured, this is where the hemp is being sourced. We know that it has this sort of testing, that it's gone through this sort of third-party compliance. And the more that you can provide that, I think the better, because there is so much. Is hemp oil going to cure my blah, blah, blah? Is this going to save this?
Right.
Can I give this to my dog?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's scary.
Right. Right. Yes, you can give it to your dog, right?
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Excellent.
But not weed.
We
just
do
CBD.
We do have to wrap up. So is there any one more
Oh,
question?
I miss you guys.
We over here.
You mentioned that you are a seasonal business. Do you have any strategies for helping keep business alive and flourishing in the slow season or off season?
Try to find things that are you need to do during your busy season, but that can be done during other times. So if there's any sort of repeatable task, or even, it sounds kind of silly, doing training manuals, doing things that help your operational procedures, things that you will have to do when you get to that busy season. Like if you know that every busy season we hire 8 workers, I would, during your off seasons, prepare how you train those people. Make sure that your team members that are there in your company go through training classes, and that they know when those people get on, bam, we're hitting the ground running. It's hot season again.
Excellent. Yeah. If you had one tip for our entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs in the audience, what would
I actually
that be?
got it from another female entrepreneur, and I hadn't thought about it, but getting your own legal counsel for yourself external to your business is crucial. And I didn't even think about that, because I think most people think that your business attorney is there to also protect you, but they are there for the business.
Right.
So as you
Excellent.
grow,
That's
as you
a good
take
one.
on corporate roles, make sure that you are protected personally as well in case of hostile takeovers, anything, shareholder lawsuits. You personally want to have your back watched.
That's a really good one. No one is, in all the years I've been doing this,
Right?
nobody has ever given me that piece of advice. And this has been a long time I've been doing this.
Leah D'Ambrosio, she is the co-founder of Your Highness podcast. She gave me
Okay.
that advice about a year ago, and every time I meet someone, I say this is the best advice I've gotten in the last year.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Darby. Thank you all for being here. And we will see you next month with Tim Osako from CTG. He has a 25-person healthcare technology company right here in Savannah, Georgia.